Hallelujah. All my New South Empire and wonderful and fantastic fun family of winners. It's your winner, Fix You Sergio Peoples Huff. That's right, we're back at it again, and y'all know what time it is. We're talking about the Harris and Trump battle, the race for presidential, for the election, and see who's going to be the president next year. Matter of fact, 20 days, 19 days? That's it. It's coming up on us. I got my panel. I got actor, activist extraordinaire, Mr. Hawthorne James over here. I got multiple award-winning director, producer, writer, actor, filmmaker, cinematographer, photographer, videographer, Mr. Michael E. Bowie, and also political strategist Samuel Blue. Welcome, guys. Glad to have you guys again. Y'all make this show what it is, and we really, Sawyer and Sean and I really do appreciate you. And shout out to Sawyer Akins, my engineer, and the producer, Mr. Sean Starr. With that being said, I don't know how many, they said over 90 million people seen the interview yesterday. Kamala Harris interview. I'm doing better, Mr. Louis. Kamala. Harris's interview with Brett Baer was yesterday. And we're going to be discussing how that went. And we're also going to be discussing Trump's town hall yesterday also. First of all, just in case some of y'all didn't see the interview, we're going to show a small portion of, I believe, is the very first question asked of Kamala Harris's interview.
And when you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. Most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So, looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
At the beginning of our administration, within practically hours of taking the oath, the first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the Chips and Science Act, before the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the... Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please? But you have to let me finish,
You
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate, and they didn't bring up that bill.
I'm in the middle of responding to the point you're raising, and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
We recognized from day one that, to the point of this being your first question, it is a priority for us as a nation and for the American people. And our focus has been on fixing a problem. And from day one, then, we have done a number of things, including to address our asylum system and put more resources, getting more judges, what we needed to do to tighten up penalties and increase penalties for illegal crossings, what we needed to do to deal with points of entry between border entry points. That's the work we did, and we worked on supporting what was a bipartisan effort, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, to actually strengthen the border. That border bill would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border, which is why I believe the Border Patrol agents supported the bill. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States, which is a scourge affecting people of every background, every geographic location in our country, killing people. It would have allowed us to put more resources into prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, which I have done as the Attorney General, former Attorney General of a border state.
Madam Vice President, a couple of things.
Prosecuted trafficking of drugs, guns, and human beings. And Donald Trump, but let me just finish.
Six Democrats voted against that bill.
Learned about that bill and told them to kill it because he preferred to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And in this election, this is rightly a discussion that the American people want to have. And what they want are solutions, and they want a president of the United States who's not playing political games with the issue,
I hear you,
but actually is focused on fixing it.
Six Democrats voted against that bill. It would have allowed 1.8 million illegal immigrants into the country a year. A lot of conservatives had a problem with it. These are the six Democrats. But more importantly, back to the original premise, Jocelyn Mungari, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration, well before a negotiated bipartisan bill. Former President Clinton actually referred to Laken Riley Sunday, campaigning for you in Georgia, saying if those men had been properly vetted, Laken Riley probably would not have been killed. So if it wouldn't have happened, this is well before any negotiation. This is well before Donald Trump got involved in the politics. This is a specific policy decision by your administration to release these men into the country. So what I'm saying to you, do you owe
Brett,
those families an apology?
Let me just say, first of all, those are tragic cases. There's no question about that. There's no question about that. And I can't imagine the pain that the families of those victims have experienced for a loss that should not have occurred. So that is true. It is also true that if a border security had actually been passed 9 months ago, it would be 9 months that we would have had more border agents at the border, more support for the folks who are working around the clock trying to hold it all together.
Madam Vice President.
To ensure that no future harm would occur. And this election in 20 days will determine whether we have a president of the United States who actually cares more about fixing a problem, even if it is not to their political advantage in an election, because there was a solution, Brett.
Madam Vice President, it was a policy decision in the early part of your administration. I will let one of the mothers.
All right. I don't seen enough of that right there, but I just said to say why a simple apology instead of talking about somebody else. Everybody made mistakes. You're not perfect. I apologize for not having this in place or that in place or not. I apologize for the 6 Democrats that voted against it, against having trumping up border security. Mr. Hawthorne, do you think by the way, that wasn't the first question. The first question, to me, she just blatantly ignored and went off skirted around it. But that clip right there, do you think she answered that question?
You know, as listening to it, I yes and no. I think she did answer what she wanted to answer. She said she put it off on other people. Like Trump, you know, it's his fault, not our fault. So, yeah, I guess she answered the question. I mean, that was rare to hear her actually answer a question. Because most of the time it's like she gets asked a question and all of a sudden it's like, as the joke is going around, I worked at McDonald's. Lady, please. I worked at the Colonel's. You know, does that qualify me? Well, I think it qualifies me just as well as it qualifies you. You know, I don't know. So, y'all can answer that better than I can, probably.
All right, Coach Sensei. Did she answer that question to the fullest?
I think she did. I think that she didn't respond the way he wanted her to respond, but she gave her perspective in what she did, what the administration has done to try to do immigration reform. how it's been blocked, by Republicans. Now, you can talk about 8 or 9 or a dozen Democrats. You can do the same thing with a handful of Republicans. There's always people that buck their party for one reason or another. Maybe they weren't happy with some aspect of the bill. That being said, yeah. But I think she answered it. And another thing, I just want to speak to, I respect what Brother James is saying about wanting people to cut to the chase, but we know that politicians, when they go on a show, people ask a question because it's a trap. So the politician is trying to take the narrative and give their perspective. If they just answer, it's like the prosecutors, like when they go to the Senate and they say, just answer the question, yes or no, to answer the question, because she's done that.
Yeah and nay, yeah and nay.
So you fall, exactly. So you fall into the trap. They try to give context around it. I would say that she does a better job of giving context around the question than most of them do, because some of them go straight to talking about, you ask about child care, and they start talking about
Canada.
Immigrants eating pets. So I think she did a great job. And as far as the running joke that was referenced about, I worked at McDonald's, that type of thing. If you notice, J.D. Vance, the first question he was asked during his debate, he talked about himself before he answered the question. Everyone was saying they didn't know who Kamala Harris was. So she made sure she repeated, I was the mother of the daughter of so-and-so, and I worked like you did. I did this and that. She was familiarizing herself to the American people. And if a man was doing that, nobody thinks twice about it. But for some reason, a black woman does that, and it's a joke. But they all do that. And I don't have a problem. I didn't have a problem when Vance told us who he was. That's fine. But then don't pay her because she does that. That's part of what her campaign is about, is helping people understand where she came from, what.
Okay. Now, when J.D. Vance did it, he came on with it, introducing himself. She has a tendency to do that when asked a question. That's where I see the difference. Now, I must say, she is doing much better than before. She has a hell of a coach. Whoever's coaching her is doing really good with her. Because she is doing much better. But
that's her initial. That's the first thing you hear on the first question. Yes.
Yeah, but he wasn't asked a question. That was his introduction to the world. He wasn't asked a question when he introduced himself.
He was asked a question, and then he went into an introduction of himself before he asked the question. Go watch it. And
you know what? You are correct. You are correct. I stand correct. All right.
Yes?
Activist Blue was did she directly answer that question, or did she deviate from it?
She came nowhere close to answering the question. If you think about what the question was, he spoke to when they first came into office. Does she regret anything that they did about removing all those 94 policies that secured the border? She went into what happened 9 months ago. We're talking about 3.5 years ago. That's what his question was. And even as she began to speak, she began to just feel. I tell people all the time, just because you're talking doesn't mean you're speaking. And all she was doing was talking. So he gave her another opportunity near the end. Again, let's go back. When you first came into office at the beginning of your administration, do you have any regrets? He gave her multiple opportunities, but she didn't take that. Now, when we look at what the key words that she mentioned, she said their priority was the immigration system. When it's your priority, remember when they came into office, they had the White House, they had the Senate, and they had the House. So it wouldn't have been an issue to get that passed. It wasn't even brought up for a vote her leadership in the Senate, Schumer, they didn't bring it up for a vote at all. So that tells me right there that that's not your priority. But she didn't answer the question. She said a whole lot about the 16th, and he even tried to redirect her to say, hey, this is when you first came into office at the beginning, 3.5 years ago. This is before Trump came involved. This is before all these things. And even 6 of your party mates, your Democrats, voted against it. So I don't think she answered it nowhere close to it.
And I noticed, I don't know if anybody else did, but I noticed that he had to keep interrupting her to get her back on to the topic, back onto the question. Then he was like, hold on, like basically he was like, hold on, you're not answering the question. He had to keep interrupting her. But anyway, that's not the first question. The first question was, Michael, you want to rebuttal on that though, real quick?
Well, I mean, it's amazing the perspective different people have. She asked the question, but not the way he wanted her to answer. He wanted her to say, "Oh, I apologize for killing these people." She didn't kill those people. And from her perspective, if the Republicans had negotiated in good faith an immigration bill from the start, which they haven't been able to do for 3 or 4 administrations, then there would have been processes in place to fix the issue. We had more judges to look at cases for asylum. We had more border security. Hundreds and hundreds of border security. The ability to police and stop fentanyl. All of those things, but they don't want to negotiate that. That's what she's saying. He wants her to say, "Oh, I apologize that somebody was killed." She didn't kill anybody. And depending on what side of the aisle you're looking at, we can say the Republicans killed them because they don't want to negotiate. They don't want to come to a comprehensive reform. Now, I'm going to say something also about this thing. In case folks, I won't see it. When folks,
briefly, Coach. Briefly.
In case people don't know, because you have a House and a Senate and a presidency, doesn't mean you have the power to legislate everything you want to legislate. The reason is there's a filibuster. There's also a 60-vote supermajority. So sometimes having 1 or 2 people over in the Senate does not get you anything unless you decide that you're going to kill the filibuster. So they're trying to avoid that, so the people, minorities, have some kind of ability to resist just being steamrolled over. So when people tell you, "Oh, they had the Senate and they had the Congress, the House," that doesn't mean that they're able to pass things if the Congress don't play ball, and at least some people in the Senate play ball. You got to have some bipartisan legislation.
All right, Mr. James, you got any rebuttal? Anything you heard?
It's like I heard Michael say that's how politicians answer. What an excuse! I listened to Jill Stein today for the first time. Really, she did an interview on PBS. They would ask her a question, and she actually answered it. She actually answered the questions. Her vice presidential pick actually answered the questions. And they were intelligent. That's what's driving me. I mean, I don't give a damn about the Republicans, nor do I give a damn about the Democrats, because they're both worthless people to me. They really are, and they've shown it over and over and over all my life. Can we just answer a question? If I don't like the answer, that's okay. But at least you answered the question. That's the way you feel. At least now I know. I don't. You can't see this. I'm going into a tricky situation here, and Michael has called her black again. most people will look at you, but Candace Owens is a very interesting person to me, because of the fact that most of the stuff that she has said in the past, I have vehemently hated listening to her. But lately, she's been talking some really, really good stuff. And one of the things that she's doing is going back to those Jamaican roots. And it is true, Jamaica is a country. It is not a people. There are white Jamaicans, there are Asian Jamaicans. As a kid, I was sitting on a bus in Chicago once, and all of a sudden I heard people saying, "Yeah, man, blah, 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 blah." And I turned around to see who was talking. They had stopped talking. Then when I turned back around, they started talking again. I turned around and finally caught them talking. There were two white boys on the bus in Chicago, and it was flabbergasting to me. Opened my eyes as a child to know that you can be from a country and not of that country. What Sam just held up, I'm not. I think I know what it is, Sam. But that whole Miss Beryl stuff, it's a lie. So how can I trust you if you lie about your background? Mm-hmm. Give me a reason to trust you if you can't even tell the truth about who you are. That's all. You as a. I don't want to get off on subject, but Jill Stein was very, very interesting to me.
And you know what? The very first question. Okay, I agree with you, Mr. James, that it's really simple. Instead of skirting around trying to explain, just answer the question.
Let me just quickly say, go back to when the guy started introducing himself. He introduced himself because most people didn't know who he was, and it only took a few minutes, and then he went to the question. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like he introduced himself and then started talking about whatever he wants to talk about. He did go back to the question. So
right, he answered the question, and he talked about Kamala Harris actions, like Kamala Harris will do. Won't even answer the question and go directly to something else.